Hey everyone, it is good to see you, and I wanted to share details about the project plan template that you will now begin working on. I know many of you have been anxious to see this and felt like you weren't making progress on your project. So first, let me start by saying you have been working on your project, whether or not you realized it. In fact, many of the pieces that you're going to see listed here in the project plan have actually been assignments within your modules. And so the good news is you've got a head start on this document. The other good news is this draft is not due until June the 1st. So you will have time to continue to refine your responses. I did say draft because I want you to feel to keep in mind that part of the learning in ASF is about receiving feedback and integrating that feedback. And so you're going to receive feedback via a one-on-one meeting with Catherine in June after you submit this project plan. We hope that you are getting input from your mentors all along the development process, but mentors will also be invited to that meeting, although they don't have to attend. But we want to make sure that everyone is in agreement on this plan before you get started with your project activities. So that's another important takeaway today is you may not start on your project activities until your project plan is approved by everyone. So final version approval, that will most likely take place and kind of be ready around, let's say, the third week of June or by the end of June. So if you are saying, oh no, I need to get started, I'm working at a summer camp and our summer camp begins the beginning of June, well, then that means you need to work with Catherine to set an earlier deadline for your draft than June the 1st. But I'm operating under the assumption that most of you will not be getting started before July, and therefore we're going to continue to aim for that June 1 date. All right, so let me share my screen and we can go through this section by section. I'm not going to, necessarily read it to you, but I did want to point out a few things. Right. As I'm screen sharing, this is the second time I recorded this because the first time it did not capture my screen so properly, like was going in and out. So I hope you can see this now. Again, demographics to start and end date, an approximate number of hours per week. Just to emphasize what Catherine has been discussing with you in one of the Google Classroom assignments about like finding time. How do you find time for ASF? One of the questions I'm frequently asked is like, well, how much time should I be spending? So 4 to 5 hours per week is our recommendation, and that's going to kind of carry you towards that goal of 200 overall hours for the planning and the implementation of your project. So obviously right now you are primarily doing planning activities, and then hopefully by July you'll be positioned to actually get to start. Now the exception to that is if you are doing any kind of shadowing or volunteering at your site right now to get to know the organization, the people, the clients, then you can count some of those hours towards direct service. But otherwise, all of the, finding research, meeting with mentors, that is administrative planning indirect. We kind of use a couple of terms, but that is not direct service hours. Okay, so approximate number of hours per week. It does not have to be evenly spread out, but just keep that in the back of your mind that in order to reach 200 hours, it will be roughly 4 to 5 hours per week. The fellowship project profile, you have begun to outline health equity context and data describing the need. Likewise, strengths to build upon is something new. And I did want to take this opportunity just to let you know that this was an intentional add by our national collaborative this year. We've recognized that one of the weaknesses of the Schweitzer model is the fact that we have very much approached it as a needs-based medical model, if you will. In fact, when you applied, we even asked you, like, what is an unmet need in the community and what would you do to meet that need? There is an asset-based approach to community development, and we want to try to start to pull in more of that. So you operate in communities that, yes, have needs, but yes, they also have strengths. And your project will be more successful if you recognize those strengths and try to leverage them. So we're going to look at an example later of what that might look like, but just know that that is an important part. And I think as we emphasize more about the health equity principles, that's also something where hopefully we can do a better job of really valuing what the community already has and how we can enhance those assets. Another thing that I want to, kind of name is that we are also changing our language about target population. So that has previously been what we called, the group that you are seeking to work with, your clients, your project participants. It's, language matters, and we just want to make sure that we are all emphasizing a partnership model. And again, thinking about Ernesto Cerulli's video, that we don't come in with kind of a paternalistic approach. Your outcome statement, I know, is a work in progress, and I just wanted to say thank you for turning in such amazing first drafts last week. I hope the feedback sessions were helpful. I enjoyed reading and responding to those, and I look forward to seeing how they will continue to refine as you get more understanding of kind of who you'll be working with and how many people and what's a realistic goal to shoot for, and really just honing in on like, how are we going to even measure these things? So the next pieces are what are not yet familiar to you: action steps, outputs and milestones, activities, and then we have not really discussed yet the inputs or resources that you'll need. So let me again say that right now we are in a module where we're asking you to look for evidence-informed practices. The reason is we do not want you recreating the wheel in ASF, meaning it is going to be a better use of your time. It is also going to be more likely that you will affect change if you use a strategy that others have already proven is effective to reach your goal. So if your goal is to, increase the physical activity of adolescents, well, okay, what's worked for others, and we can look for community-based examples. We can also look in the literature for research-based examples. And so that's what we're going to do right now. I have a spreadsheet that you'll be using, and it's again kind of a separate little Google Classroom part of this 2-week module, where you can look at like, what is Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, CDC, some of these other really reputable sources. They've gathered a lot of this information. So let's tap into it. Let's see if we can get some ideas. Make sure that what you thought you were going to do is in fact a valid approach before we commit to what we're going to do for our activities. Also, the scope of the project, you may realize, wow, it takes a lot more, like intense intervention to make people stop smoking, for instance, than I thought. So that's going to inform your result statement. You may need to work with people over a longer period of time. You may need to work with fewer clients in order to have that type of, duration and intensity of your intervention. So again, all of these pieces kind of influence each other, and we don't expect you to have them all figured out yet, but let's focus right now on finding evidence-informed practices so that you can begin to outline your activities and milestones. Now, as you do these things, a lot of times students will find like, oh, there's this program and it's perfect. I can build their social emotional learning skills for the low price of, $2,500. Unfortunately, a lot of the evidence-informed materials are, copyrighted. And so the example actually, suggests that you may be able to reach out to the people who own that copyright and ask for, a free kind of student version. But if not, we recognize that, there are some limitations on how much of an evidence-informed approach we're going to be able to use, and that we will need to adapt whatever materials we do find. This obviously also connects here to the inputs. So remember, inputs is both like time, personnel, expertise, as well as monetary resources. We in ASF of Alabama provide each project with $100 of seed funds that you can use. But if you are thinking about doing cooking demonstrations, once a week for 16 weeks, well, that $100 is not going to go very far. And so you need to be thoughtful now before you commit to that approach. Who's providing those food, those ingredients? Is your site? Have you had a discussion with them about whether or not they have the budget to provide you with the materials? Um, if not, are you going to have to spend time gathering, kind of doing fundraising? We never want fundraising to be a primary activity of a fellowship, but there may be times when, I was making a comment on another fellow's thing to say, do they have access to soap or hand sanitizer? If not, you may have to do a drive to collect enough to even make it accessible for people to engage in hand washing. So be thoughtful now about what resources are going to be needed. Is the $100 of seed funds going to be sufficient? And if not, what other activities do you need to build into your plan in order to have what you need to implement it? And a lot of times we just have to say, can we do this without that resource? Evaluation verification plan, continue to work with your academic mentors in particular to find out how you can, feasibly do it, but hopefully in a way that is valid. And then we'll be talking more about sustainability plan. And I think the examples will clarify that a lot. Now, another thing you've already been doing as a part of your project plan is, gathering commitments from an academic mentor and a site mentor. So these 2 pages you may already have complete, and we can use the versions you've already submitted. So don't feel like you need to have them refill that out. Page, whatever we're on here now, 5 is a signature page, and you do not need to have signatures on your draft. We do want you getting input from your mentors along the way to make sure that you're creating something and spending time in a way that they're going to eventually agree upon it. But because there are going to be revisions made at that feedback session, it's just more efficient for you to wait and have everyone sign up on the final version. So page 5, just skip that for now. And then page 6 is where the examples begin. I'm not going to read through each of these, but as you get down to the sections where we have not yet begun, like strengths to build upon or outputs and milestones, you will see a description of what is meant by that topic, as well as an example from kind of a fake student example. So take a look, let us know what questions you have. I also wanted to say that right now, as you begin to think about what activities will lead you towards that outcome, we are going to then pick up at orientation when we are face-to-face and spend some time thinking about milestones and kind of how specific we need to break down how we're going to work towards these goals. So that's something we will be thinking a little bit more about together. And trying to think if there's anything else in here that I wanted to point out. I don't think so, but as always, let us know if you have any questions, and we'll look forward to just continuing to work with you on the drafts and the revisions and ultimately getting started. All right, take care.